The wind howled through the small, isolated village of Grimsby, where the nights were long and the shadows seemed to have a life of their own. The locals whispered of a legend, an ancient curse tied to the darkest part of the nearby forest, where no one dared to go after sunset. They called it the Hollow Man, a creature of unspeakable evil who took something from his victims, something vital. And every year, he returned on Halloween, hunting for his next soul. No one knew where the legend began, but it had been told for centuries. The villagers spoke of strange occurrences, of disappearances and deaths that were never explained. They warned their children to stay inside on Halloween night, locking their doors and sealing their windows, just in case the Hollow Man roamed too close. Max had never believed in the legend. He was 17, rebellious, and bored of the village's superstitions. His parents, like everyone else, took the Hollow Man legend seriously, bolting the doors and pulling the curtains tight every October 31st. But Max didn't see the point. "It's just a story to scare people," he told his friends the night before Halloween, as they gathered in the village square, surrounded by the dying light of the day. "We should prove it's all nonsense." His friends weren't so sure. They'd heard too many stories, seen too many strange things happen. But Max was convincing, and by the end of the evening, he had managed to talk 3 of them, Emma, Luke, and Sam, into coming with him to the edge of the forest the next night, just to show there was nothing to fear. "Midnight," Max said, his voice full of confidence. "We'll meet at the old stone bridge. If the Hollow Man's real, let him come find us." The next night, the wind was cold, biting at their skin as the group made their way through the dark streets of Grimsby. The village was unusually quiet for Halloween, with no children out trick-or-treating, no carved pumpkins lighting doorsteps. The entire place felt deserted, as though everyone had retreated into the safety of their homes. "Maybe this isn't such a good idea," Emma muttered as they reached the stone bridge, her breath visible in the frigid air. Luke and Sam exchanged nervous glances, but Max grinned, unfazed. "Come on, it's just a creepy story. We'll hang out here for an hour, prove nothing happens, and then head back. Easy." The forest loomed ahead of them, its trees swaying in the wind. It was thick and dark, almost unnaturally so, as though the shadows within it were waiting for something. Max shrugged off the uneasy feeling in his chest. He wouldn't admit it, but the place was unsettling. They sat on the bridge, talking quietly as the minutes ticked by. The night was eerily silent, with no sounds of animals, no rustling leaves, only the faint whistle of the wind. Every now and then, one of them would glance toward the forest, half expecting to see something moving in the darkness. But there was nothing. "See?" Max said after about 30 minutes, his voice breaking the tense silence. "Told you there's nothing out here." "Let's give it a bit more time," Luke said, though he didn't sound convinced. Emma shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around herself. "I don't like this. It feels wrong." Sam nodded in agreement. "Maybe we should just head back. There's no point in waiting here all night." But before anyone could move, there was a sound. It came from deep within the forest, faint at first, but growing louder with each passing second, a low, hollow moan, like the wind moving through a narrow tunnel. They all froze. "What was that?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. Max frowned, trying to keep up his bravado. "It's just the wind." But as the sound grew closer, it didn't seem like wind at all. It was rhythmic, deliberate, as though something, no, someone, was moving through the forest toward them. And then, through the trees, they saw it. At first, it was just a shadow, a tall, thin figure standing at the edge of the forest, barely visible in the gloom. But as it moved closer, the details became clearer. The figure was dressed in ragged, tattered clothing, its body impossibly elongated, its limbs too long, too thin. But it was the face, or lack thereof, that made them all gasp in terror. Where a face should have been, there was only a smooth, featureless expanse of skin. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just a hollow void. The Hollow Man. Max's bravado vanished in an instant. "Run!" he shouted, his voice shaking with panic. They bolted from the bridge, sprinting back toward the village as fast as they could, their hearts pounding in their chests. But the Hollow Man was fast, faster than any of them had imagined. The low, hollow moaning sound grew louder, closer, as though it were chasing them, hunting them. Sam was the first to fall, tripping over a root as he tried to cut through a field. He hit the ground hard, and before anyone could turn back to help him, the Hollow Man was upon him. Sam screamed, but it was cut short as the creature reached down with its long, bony fingers and touched his chest. In an instant, Sam went silent, his body going limp as the Hollow Man stood over him. Max, Emma, and Luke kept running, too terrified to look back. "Keep going!" Max yelled, pushing Emma forward as they reached the village streets. "We're almost there." But as they neared the safety of the village square, Luke stumbled, his foot catching on the uneven cobblestones. He hit the ground with a cry, and before Max or Emma could stop, the Hollow Man appeared beside him, moving with a speed that defied logic. Max watched in horror as the Hollow Man placed a hand on Luke's chest. Just like with Sam, Luke's body went slack, his eyes glazing over as though his very soul had been taken. Emma sobbed, pulling at Max's arm. "We have to go. We can't stop." They ran, hearts racing, until they reached Max's house. Max fumbled with the key, finally throwing open the door and pulling Emma inside. He slammed the door shut, locking it as fast as he could. They backed away from the door, their bodies trembling with fear. For a moment, there was silence. "Do you think it's gone?" Emma whispered, her voice hoarse. Max didn't answer. He wasn't sure. He had never seen anything like that, nothing that could explain what had just happened. He tried to catch his breath, listening for any sound of movement outside. Then came the knock. It was soft at first, just a single, hollow tap on the door. Max froze, his heart pounding in his ears. Another knock, louder this time. Then another, and another, each one more insistent. Max shook his head, backing away further. It can't be. But the knocking continued, relentless, until suddenly it stopped. For a long, tense moment, there was only silence. Then, slowly, the door began to creak open. Max hadn't unlocked it. He knew he hadn't. But the door opened anyway, swinging wide to reveal the Hollow Man standing in the doorway, its featureless face staring straight at them. Max screamed, grabbing Emma's hand and pulling her toward the back of the house. But it was too late. The Hollow Man moved toward them, its long, bony fingers reaching out. Max felt its cold touch on his chest, and everything went dark. When Max opened his eyes, he was standing in the middle of the village square. The sun was rising, casting long shadows over the cobblestones. But something was wrong. He felt empty. He looked down at his hands and saw nothing. He raised a hand to his face, but there was no face, no features, just smooth, hollow skin. He was the Hollow Man now. And he was still hungry.